Welcome to From the Crow's Nest Live here at AOC 2025. I'm your host, Ken Miller from the Association of Old Crows. We are walking the exhibit floor talking to guests, speakers, and exhibitors throughout the day. I am pleased to be here with Dr. Alexis Ross. She is the president of Apex Defense Strategies. Dr. Ross, you were a speaker at one of our sessions this afternoon on accelerating the acquisition process. Not an easy topic.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the session.
It was great. We had a good panel of folks, a couple of former PEOs, a couple of people from that run consortium management firms, and the CISO from the Department of War. So it was a really nice conversation. We focused on all the key elements and what's happening in acquisition reform right now, but also sort of what's different now versus what's not so different. We've been here before.
Yes. All right. So the administration recently released some acquisition reform proposal, and a lot of times these proposals, they start off ambitious, but then they end up, once they get through Congress and the administration, it turns into rearranging deck chairs sometimes on the Titanic. How do we affect real positive and sustainable change to the acquisition process, and what are some of the challenges that we have to confront first?
There are absolutely real barriers to accomplishing acquisition reform. It's a critically important question. As a person who wrote legislation in Congress on acquisition and then came to the department and had to implement it, I know firsthand how challenging it can be to walk it to the next stage of the process. In this case, I would say over time I've learned a couple of things on this. First, the barriers to acquisition reform are culture. There's about 2.9 million people that are employed by the Department of War. I mean, that's a significant amount of people that actually have to be, sort of have their culture and operation shift. Also, when there is inconsistent or turnover in leadership, and when either the administration changes or a program executive officer or a PM changes, that often means that we're adjusting priorities and major initiatives. So those are a couple of problems, and real specific to acquisition reform, something that I noticed was that, there are three larger elements to acquisition: requirements and what we need to buy, acquisition, program management and contracting, and then there's the budget and how we actually fund everything. And if you don't try to reform all of those elements, it really is you're leaving something behind.
Yeah.
And every time, in this last few years, we've done a lot of acquisition reform, and I got to the point where I noticed we were moving a lot faster, but we were always limited by, in what we could buy, by how quickly we could get the funding.
So you mentioned how important culture is, and there's a saying that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We have strategies in EMSA. We've had numerous strategies over the years. We currently are implementing a new one, but we are still facing the culture. The other piece that you mentioned I want to go back on or talk to you a little bit more about, is this need for authority and resources at the right time and place. Because in the EW community, we can have the strategy, we can affect culture, but we don't have the leadership. How difficult is it to match each of those three obstacles at the same time as a process?
Yeah. Okay, so let me take the culture question first. So, reform, like strategy, it's really just a good idea until it's implemented, and implementation is going to be critically important, which all comes down to people. Who are the leaders that are driving it? What are the personalities behind it? How are they all working together on a common goal? So, culture becomes always the main impediment to all of this. So, but I have a positive spin on culture, actually. Slightly different take on it. I think that implementation will work if you have clear, consistent communication from leaders plus time. It's a basic equation, right? Clear, consistent communication from leaders plus time, and slowly the system will catch up. The good news here is there's two good things. The first good news is time is a little bit, I think, on our side in this time around. The administration has rolled out a lot of changes. We're still in the first year of the term. So there's 3 years left. That's a lot of implementation time. 1 year to 3 years is a pretty good ratio. It's not usually that generous, right? Secondly, the portfolio acquisition executives are supposed to have longer tenures.
Yes.
So 4 years plus 2 optional years, that's great. That turnover, helping to arrest that frequent turnover in military programs at the programmatic level plus consistency in the leadership at the administration and political level could help us out here. Yeah. Second point on culture is another positive spin. The military, and by extension, the Department of War, civilians, and enterprise that are that work for the military, are by nature conditioned to take orders, hierarchical, and very deferential to leadership. Mm-hmm. So, in essence, from a sociological standpoint, we have like I said, with consistent communication from leadership over time, it starts to take hold, and people start to move out and progress towards that shared common goal. So I'm optimistic.
And that's great to hear. I was just having in a conversation earlier with someone, they were a former program manager. We were talking about this change going from every 2-year rotation down up to possible 6 years, and what that could mean for really helping those PEO leaders be the problem owner for a program or a capability, which is something that we've not had enough in years past.
And to your earlier point about budget, that portfolio acquisition executive, if this is all implemented right and it's done the way it's meant to be, that person owns the entirety of the problem. So what we want to buy, they have to be given the decision making on what we're going to buy, for what reasons, to fill what gaps, from whom, and on what timeline, and at what cost. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't give them the authority to manage that budget, just like also managing the program contract, we're obviously going to be, disrupting things, because water finds cracks, and the water freezes, and it crumbles the foundation. So foundationally, if acquisition reform is going to work, we have to be addressing all aspects of the foundation: budget, requirements, and acquisition. So.
Yeah. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking time to talk about your session. I was unable to attend it, so this is great that I was able to flag you down here on the show floor. Really appreciate your contribution to the conversation, and look forward to hearing more about how the acquisition reform process is moving forward. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
that will conclude this segment of From the Crow's Nest Live here at AOC 2025. We'll be back with more later. Thanks for joining me.